My lecture today is the SketchUp Workflow for architecture. And so I do hear a lot of talk about SketchUp, and oftentimes it's said that it's a sketchy program, it's not precise, you can't do construction documents, you can only use it for kind of quick, sketchy, lightweight design, and then you have to move on to some other program and to finish out the design and properly document it. And it's just not the case. And that's what I'm going to show you today, is that I've created the SketchUp Workflow for architecture. And this allows you to run with SketchUp through the entire design process. So SketchUp provides better information so you can make more informed design decisions. And it's usable at every phase of the design process, from site analysis, schematic design, design development, and construction documents. You're always getting better information because you have a 3D model in front of you. You're not hit with a bunch of pop-ups and dialogues that ask you all these questions. It looks the way that the model should look, what you're expecting in real life. And so it's providing you better information. And so I'm going to show you kind of a linear process today, and I'm going to go through each phase of the design process. And the first problem I'm going to solve is field measurements. So what I've always found is that when I go out to a site, I have to take a clipboard with some graph paper, and I go pace off the building, and then I make a sketch on my graph paper, and then I get going on recording field measurements, and then inevitably my drawing runs off the page. It's just like not scaled properly, it's out of whack, and I have to kind of make all these squiggles and notes. So I've developed a technique for taking field measurements that works exceptionally well, and SketchUp in Layout expedites that. So I'm going to hop into SketchUp right now, and let's do that. So I'll go to SketchUp, and the first part of this is geolocating the model. So if I go to File and choose Geolocation and then Add Location, I can then open up this like Maps dialog, and I can type in a real-world address. So we're going to go with 3655 Milwaukee Street, and that is in Denver. So I'll hit Enter, and then that's going to zoom in, and there's a little plus sign. It's probably hard to see, but like right in the center of your screen, that's where it like zones in right on that address. And the imagery provider did change, so the imagery is not quite as good these days, but I'm going to show you a way to get around that. So I just click Select Region, and then I'm going to import just the part of the site that I need. So I'll click Import. All right, so now I have this kind of grainy photograph of my house. Now this is not exceptionally usable, but my friend Daniel Tall, he put together a plugin called Placemaker. So I'm going to open up Placemaker. I'm going to select this aerial imagery and then click on Placemaker, and then let's go ahead and download our near map imagery. So I've got the aerial imagery selected. I chose near map as my source, and I click on imagery. And so now this is going to take 4 credits. I'll click download, and watch how much better this gets. So this is, keep in mind, this process, this is what I do when I get my first call, and I say like, okay, let me just type in your address and then import their site. And now I've got this like super high-res aerial imagery, and I can use my tape measure tool, and I can say, yeah, I can tell that your house is 26, 35 feet long. It just gives me instant information. I can see fences and just a lot of information that I didn't have, and this is all within like 2 or 3 minutes of opening SketchUp. All right, so then the first thing I need to do is what we want to do is create a drawing. All right, so I'm just going to loosely trace this this aerial imagery, and so something along those lines. And then there's another feature in here where I can click on this photo tour, and then I can actually look around in Street View, and I can see that there's like about a foot overhang on this house. So again, I'm just kind of pulling as much information as I can, using those like context clues to just fill in the blanks and get the biggest jump start I can. So what I'm going to do is take that outline that I made, I'm going to offset by a foot, and then maybe I'll just offset by like 8 inches. And I've been to this house, so I'm cheating a little bit, but you can make some assumptions, or you could just do a nice simple outline and just fill in the blanks when you get to the site to measure. All right, so we don't need this right now. I'm going to get my field of view back to kind of a wider angle. All right, so as I said, there's like a 1 foot overhang there, soffit. So I'll just offset this by like 12 inches. And then I'm going to offset this one as well. We'll go with offset, and I can just double click, and that'll repeat the last offset. All right, and then these walls do in fact go back here. So I'll just kind of make that happen. And then as I said, I could offset again and say like 8 inches. And then I could take these lines and offset by say, and that looked, that is a stick frame, so it's a different construction type. So we'll just say like 4.5 inches. Enter. So now I just have kind of a simple outline of this. And I do, one thing I didn't put in there is there's a front porch, but that's okay. You can just kind of get the general massing of the building. And then when you get to the site, it's super easy just to like fill in the details rather than having to paste the whole thing off. All right, so it's great to have a SketchUp model, that's one thing, but we need drawings. And so layout is an often overlooked program. I can't think of a program that more people have just completely ignored than layout. It started in beta, it showed up on our desktops like 12 years ago or something like that, and it did crash a lot in the beginning, and it just wasn't clear what it did. But now they've progressed this layout program to a point where it is super powerful. So much so that like you can even just draft inside of layout. You don't even need SketchUp. You can just draft. So let's get our drawing to move over into layout. So to do that, these are like kind of our 12 steps, to get through, get a drawing from SketchUp into layout. So I'm going to go to Camera and choose Standard Views, top, and then I'm going to go to Camera and choose Parallel Projection. Then I'm going to go to my layers and turn off my snapshot, and then go to my styles and select maybe a hidden line style. And I'll right click in the white space. That always clears our selection. So now this is looking more like a flat line drawing. So we're kind of in good shape there. And then I'm going to go to my scenes, and then let me kind of collapse this window just a notch there. Like this. And we get some, not quite that much. Okay, so I'll add a scene. I'm going to move it to the bottom like that. And then I want to make sure that all of my properties to save are checked on like that. All right, and so now I'm going to rename this one, and we'll just call it Field Notes like that. All right, and then I'm going to save this, and I'm going to put this file in my desktop temp. So File, Save. And then I'll go to our desktop and choose temp. Okay, so in here, I'm going to name this file Field Notes, like that. All right, so now I'm going to hop over into layout. So in layout, I can start a new document, so under File, New, and then I can choose a template, and I do have my own template set up, and I even have one I call Field Notes, and I can share this with all you guys too. And all those other templates, they do come with Condoc. So the Field Notes template, it kind of looks like that old familiar graph paper that or engineering pads, and it has the grid turned on. It has some fields ready for me to kind of comment on this project. So all I need to do is go to File and choose Insert. And when I insert this, I can go to my desktop and choose Temp. So we'll go to our desktop, Temp, and then insert our Field Notes. So now, think of SketchUp as model space. If you're familiar at all with like 2D CAD, model space is SketchUp where everything is built to a real-world scale. The house was like roughly 35 feet long. But then it needs to come into layout where we flatten it and compress it and put it onto a sheet of paper using an architectural scale. So that's what we can do over here is with our SketchUp model. Let me just stretch this out a bit. And then I'll stretch it down the other way as well, like that. All right, so now my SketchUp model, this viewport, I can just click on this drop down and I can choose Field Notes, so we're good there. And then also I want to set up on a vector. And so if I like zoom in on this, we don't have any curved lines, but you can see like how the lines aren't real clean there. If I switch this over to be vector, look how clean those lines get. And we start to get the line weight showing up. So it's really important to understand the line weight and render settings inside of layout because you've got raster, vector, and hybrid, and each one of them is different. Yes, sir. To make it default, I don't think so, although with Condoc, when you kick things over, you're already pre-programming the viewports. So that way, you know, we've kind of taken that out of the equation. That's the idea. So I agree, though. I think the reason that raster is the default is that that is the surefire way to make that viewport look the way you expected it to. Even if it doesn't look as good, like with crisp lines, it at least is faster and it's going to show up as expected. All right, so now we've got our kind of quick sketch laid onto a piece of graph paper, but now I want to set the scale. All right, so I'm going to go to my scales here and choose like 1/8 inch. So I can go to like 1/8 inch scale. Well, that's a bit small. So that's, you know, when I'm out in the field, I'm going to be using that sharp pencil. It's a little difficult. So let's go with 1/4 inch. And so I'll go over here and say 1/4 inch like that. And so 1/4 inch is just a notch too big. So we can make our own custom scales. So you can click this drop down and you can roll down and hit add custom scale. And if 1/4 inch is like 1 inch equals 4 feet, maybe I just need it to be like 1 inch equals 5 feet. So I would just say on the paper, we're going to say 1 inch equals 5 feet on my model space. So you can develop your own custom scales even if they're weird. All right. So, and I've already got this one added in here, so I'll just close this out, but you just hit add custom scale. All right, so then we're going to just set this to 1 inch equals 5 feet. And now it's sitting on the page exactly as I want it to. But here's the thing, my graph paper is actually set up to be, it is set up properly, so let me do this. Go to File, Document Setup, and look at our grid. And so a more common graph paper size would be like 1/8 inch. So like when you have a 1 inch division on your grid, 1 inch major grid divisions with 8 divisions in between, that's like an 1/8 inch scale. But we want like 1 inch equals 5 feet. So we have our 1 inch divisions or 1 inch spacing, and we can set this to be at 5. And that way, when we're in the field, our grid, you know, we've created a custom graph paper to fit our custom scale to get this thing paced off before we even get to the site. All right, so then I would just go to File, Export PDF, and I'll save this one again to my desktop temp folder, and I'm going to call this one Field Notes. Like that. So that would go right into my project folder. I've got this, I would print like 5 copies of this, put it on my clipboard, sharpen my pencils, head to the site with my tape measure, and now I've digitally paced off this house. This will work with any building. You know, even if you're just getting a sense of the overall shape on a piece of paper, it's super helpful before you go take the notes to have this thing set up like that. All right, so that's kind of problem number 1 that we've solved. That's right at the beginning of any project, and this has very little to do really with like drafting or design or any of that. It's just solving problems along the way because SketchUp provides you better information at all times. All right, so I'm going to close this, and we're going to hop back in here. And so I did kind of get rolling a little quickly. I'll tell you, here's my big splashy graphic here. This is Brightman Designs, Design, Drafting, Visualization, and Workflow Training. That's what we're all about, but also beyond that, beyond the design, drafting, visualization, and workflow training services, we also develop better 3D workflows for architects. And we do that by creating these tools such as like Condoc tools that automates the whole design process. I've created a series of video tutorials to learn this process from square one, wrote the book, and then we're even developing cutout people. So we're just looking at all these different ways that, you know, the SketchUp workflow for architecture that we use for our own projects. How do we make it faster, better, easier to learn? You know, where are the kind of points where it gets really difficult? And we're always striving to solve that. So we've got a little bit of a following and people who are on board with that. So we're always striving to design a better 3D workflow for architects. All right, and so the reason I got after this is because, in my opinion, 2D CAD, it's kind of like too far on the simple side. It's a powerful tool, and I definitely use 2D CAD a lot. when I got out of school. And on my first job, I was doing nothing but drafting. I got really good at 2D CAD. And it is a powerful tool, but it's 2D. It's nothing more than like a drafting table in the computer. And so you have mild efficiencies with like blocks and XREFs, but it just is not 3D, and there's a lot of features lacking. But then you get over to BIM, and like 3D BIM is way overkill. I mean, when I look around and I think about what is real architecture, and you know, I'd love to only be working on skyscrapers and the big, really cool modern museums and all that. I mean, that's not exactly real architecture to me. And when I look at like the reality, there's a lot of homes out there, a lot of like basement renovations, add-ons, additions, pop-tops. There's a lot of light commercial. I mean, the majority of what's going on in this world for architecture is not a hotel convention center that needs excessive BIM and building information modeling and automated scheduling. I find that the majority, well, definitely all of our projects, it's like, I just need something really quick and lightweight, and I don't want to be asked all those questions. So that's my opinion on BIM, is that it's a bit overkill. I think it's really a cool, powerful documentation tool if you get to that point with a big project. But for my uses and what I view as the majority of architectural projects, I think it's overkill. So that's where I find that SketchUp and the SketchUp workflow for architecture is truly balanced. It's far beyond the capabilities of 2D CAD. It's 3D, it feels like 2D CAD, except you're moving around and drafting in a 3D environment. And it falls short of the complexities and the over-featuring of BIM, where you're not asked a question every time you click a button, and then you have to like build a new wall type, and then you have to, honestly, then inevitably you have to cheat. Somehow you have to like fake it out to make it do what you want. Whereas SketchUp just lets you move freely, and the drawings, the 2D drawings, are a product of your 3D model. So that's what I love about SketchUp and layout and SketchUp workflow for architecture. All right, so the way we communicate this is I created a book. That's the manual, and it's also manual. It's not automated. You know, it's this is click by click how you set up a project using SketchUp and layout. So after the book was published, that's when I started talking to some Ruby developers, and we created the Condoc tools. So the book is the back end. It's the manual that explains how Condoc works. And then Condoc is a series of buttons that you push inside of SketchUp that drastically automate the whole process. So the book, as I explained, it goes from I go through each of the different design phases. So site analysis, schematic design, design development, and construction documents, outlining both a renovation project and a new construction project. So I've explained both of those scenarios in the book, as well as file management, how to pick a computer, just really everything that an architect would need to know about implementing this workflow. That's what the book is all about. All right, and then the Condoc tools, this is how we automate everything. So that's the series of buttons that shows up when you install the Condoc tools. And then we have the tools, the Condoc system, and the Condoc drawings. So those are kind of the three different pieces of it. And we'll look at some of those as we go through this today. All right, the big idea is that Condoc is bridging the gap between SketchUp and layout. It automates your layers, styles, and scenes. It eliminates opportunities for error, and it just gets your SketchUp model moved over into layout and set up as a 2D drawing that you can actually use. All right, so I'm going to back out and go over to SketchUp again, and I want to show you how Condoc can automate that process that we just did. So I'm just going to kind of go back out here, and let's go to our layers and turn on our terrain. And I'm going to go to a style and turn on just a different like design type style, and get back to like a perspective view. And let me just pick a different layer. I like the placemaker imagery much better. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this scene like that. And we're going to get rid of our field note scene and kind of start from scratch. Now, with Condoc, the way that this works is you can load up different drawing sets that do different tasks. So I created a drawing set specifically for the task of creating field notes. So all I need to do is click the Open button, and I'm going to go track down that new drawing set. All right, so that's, again, in my desktop temp folder. That's kind of where I'm working here. And so we'll go in our field notes, and here's the drawing set. So we've reprogrammed Condoc. By opening that new drawing set, now Condoc is programmed to automate field notes. So I'll click on the plan generator, and the plan generator now only gives me the options to create these drawings of field notes and aerial imagery. And it's specifically working with the placemaker layers. So once that's set up, you just load this thing and hit go, and it just shoots out. Actually, you can do like figure ground diagrams, aerial imagery locator maps. We've got some really cool stuff that works tandem with placemaker. For this one, creating our field notes, I'll click Setup Project, and then that's just going to kick out those scenes that I need. And then I'll save this. So I'll go to File, Save, and then I'm going to click on our Condoc Export. And so this kind of gets into that idea what I was saying before, where if I want to send these out, it's going to bundle up my drawings and push them over to layout. And I've already set up the scale, the render settings. So now, like, I don't have to choose raster vector hybrid. I don't have to mess with the line type scales. Everything's been handled. It's all pre-programmed so that you just push the button. Now, I do give you the drawing sets, so you can just run with our standards and the standards that are in the book, but you also have the Configurator Tool, and that allows you to make your own thing. So if you're like a kitchen designer, you know, and you have our Condoc Interiors drawing set, you can make it into just the layers and the drawings that you need as a kitchen designer. So let's do this though. Let's stay on task here. This is our 1 inch equals 5 feet. You can see that we're pulling, even our custom scales are being pulled out of layout. So I'll set this up at 1 inch equals 5 feet, like that. And then I'll click Send to Layout, and then we'll say OK. So now that it's sending to layout, it's bundling everything up, pushing it over into layout. And then this will close down when it's ready. And we'll hop into layout. And then I'm just going to start a new document. And we'll go with our, again, on My Templates. And then here's our field notes. Now, over here on my scrapbooks, I can go to my Condoc Drawings scrapbook. And this is where all of my Condoc drawings live, and I just drag and drop. So that's kind of the easiest way to think of it, is that Condoc automates the connection between SketchUp and layout. And you can see that for this one, I even made the style just a little bit different. I made it kind of like a light gray because I want to really fade to the background. And when I get out to actually to the site to do my field measurements, I'll use my pencil to kind of darken in what I want. So that's how that works. And then I can even add another page and go to my next drawing. And here we've got our aerial imagery. And so that way, you know, it's kind of faded out. If you want to make some different notes about the site, you know, maybe that would be a good one to set to like 1/8 inch scale or 1/16 inch. So now you've got like the aerial imagery, and you can start making notes about the site. So it's just kind of something from nothing rather quickly before you go out to the site. All right, so that's the idea behind Condoc, is drastically automating. You got it. Yeah, we're using the layout API that came out. I forget, maybe in 17 or 18, and yeah, no one's using it. But like it was perfect for our needs. Like we were doing all these like templates and placeholders before, where you would set up this whole system of like relinking things, and it worked, but it was confusing. So now it's just every time you want to kick a new drawing over, you go through that Condoc export, and you could do like just your plans, you know, just send your plans over, and then you're like, okay, I got my plans worked out. Now I'm just going to kick over the elevations. And so, you know, you don't have to have this whole like relinking thing that was, like I say, it worked. It was just confusing, and this like eliminates so many more steps. So that this came out with version Condoc 4. So we're on 4.7 now. So we're real close to 5 and getting there. So, all right. So I'll hop back in here and let me take a look. All right, so we've printed our field notes, and now we drive out to the site, and we're there in person. And I do have a very specific way that I take these field notes. And I know everyone has their own methodology, and I believe me, I learned from architects, and I looked at the way they do it. I worked at a couple different firms. I even just kind of was told to just go do it, and I tried it on my own. I saw all the pitfalls. This is where I landed, and I have a very specific reason for all of these different techniques, is because I'm planning down the road that these field notes are going to get scanned into SketchUp, and I'm going to build my existing conditions model right on top of my field notes. And the way that I take these notes is going to be super helpful if I'm just aware of it up front. So I can tell you that the way that I record measurements is always in decimal inches. So I'll do 27 from like kind of break to break. So like here, you know, this thing goes from wall to wall is 27, and from this wall to the door is 87. And then the opening there is 32.5. So I say 32.5 because if I do 32 and then 1/2, it gets just messy immediately. The other reason behind that is that my default units in SketchUp are in inches, decimal inches. And so I can just type 32.5, enter, and that's going to get me that dimension. All right. So then I always do make a few, you know, it's good to make like a few kind of a keynote type thing, or at least like a hatching, so that you don't have to call out every single wall as being 8 inches or 4.75 inches or whatever it may be. So just use kind of the hatching there. Also, I always take an X and a Y dimension. So you can see 121.75/98.5. And I put that right in the middle of the room because as I'm measuring around the room, I'm going to 80.5, you know, then 35 for the window, then 6.75. I can tell you that no matter how meticulous I am, there will be some discrepancy of a couple inches. It'll just happen. In these old houses, especially, you know, this one in Denver, these are built in like 1920s. It's just, there's always something out of true, and it'll drive you nuts trying to make it come together. So if I just get the X and the Y, I can just go back in and have a check to make sure that, like, or if I just goofed up on a dimension, I have an overall that kind of keeps everything lined up. So that's another helpful tip. All right, and then this one's super critical. Is you can see on the window, I have these dimensions on the outside. So 46/38.75. That's sill height, window height. Again, the way that I'm recording these dimensions comes into play when I'm modeling later on. So I'm going to just have a line that I copy up, and I'm going to copy up 46 inches, and then I'm going to copy it up again 38.75. All of this is designed to just make my life easier once I get back to the office. All right, and then of course some field notes, like all interior doors are 81 or all ceilings at 94 unless otherwise noted. And then this kind of a long one, it's more just illustrating the point that like there's a door where I just threw like an 80-inch on the outside, and just kind of hitting every single break. You know, it's from wall to wall to door to window. You just want to get each one of those recorded in decimal inches. All right, so let's take a look now at, and then always bring a piece of trace paper. And then you can lay your trace paper over and keep your field notes clean. So again, you don't want to use like dimension lines, or in my opinion, you don't want to use dimension lines because it just starts to muddy everything up. And then bring trace paper so that you can have like manual layers in the field. You lay the trace paper on top, and now you can lay out all of your like bathroom equipment or kitchen equipment without muddying up all the walls, you know, and getting in the way of all that. So I found this to be a really helpful tip too. Everything gets scanned, it all goes in the project folder, and then it's much clearer information. All right, so those are our final notes. Looks good, and we need to import these notes into SketchUp. So let's do that right now. I'm going to hop over here into SketchUp, and you could continue with this file. Like you could save, usually what I do is I save it as a file called field notes. Once I've got the field notes is kind of a throwaway model because I just did a quick trace. Maybe you want to keep your keep your aerial imagery, since we did use 4 credits for that download. But honestly, this line work is not really of value because it's super sketchy. I just kind of did it loosely. So we're gonna kind of dial that in. But maybe what I'll do is I'll just leave that intact for now and turn off my imagery. And then I'm gonna go to File, Import. And I'm gonna import, we're gonna go to our files of type, and we're gonna go with all supported image types, and then I've got my field notes. All right, so I'm gonna import this as an image, like that. And then we'll just kind of click, let's see, I'll click to start, move my cursor to set a dimension here. And so now what I need to do, I'm gonna move this away from here, and I'm gonna explode it, and then I'm gonna make it into a group. All right, that way it goes from being an image entity to being a surface with a material applied to it. So that's why I explode the image, and then it turns into a surface with the material applied. Very similar behavior. It's just images, like they kind of behave in a strange way. I'd prefer it to just be a surface that I can work with. Now, the other advantage there is that I can like double click into this group. All right, so this is a group, like a container that holds this geometry. Now I'm able to scale this import and scale it without messing up the whole model. So I'm going to go look for a dimension, and for instance, a good dimension might be like 121.75. I'm looking for a big dimension that I laid out the whole tape measure and got like 10 feet out of it. So I'll just measure from here to here, like that, and click. And you can see, let me do that one more time. All right, so see at the bottom right corner, it's telling me that that dimension is 6 feet. So 6 feet, 3 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna click to finish that measure command, and then I'm gonna type 121.75 inches and hit enter. Do you want to resize the active group or component? What that means is that we're only resizing the one group that we are actually double clicked into. We're not going to mess with the whole model and change everything outside of here. So I'll say yes. And now check it out. When I measure like from here to here, we're at close to 30 inches. And of course, I've done some. I may have done some doctoring to these field notes. They turned out real nice, didn't they? But I will say I have done this several times. I've used this technique over and over, and I tell you, when you get it down, it's just like it's magic. When you get back to the office and you don't have all of these like drawings scattered that are like just a bunch of chicken scratch. I mean, this is like so nice when you're up late and trying to get things done, when it's just clear and you have a clear way forward to just get the work done. So now what I would do is I would take this and I would move. So like for instance, you can kind of see they're oriented the same way. So maybe I'll just like do like a precise move from this point to this point, like that. And now we're in good shape, and I can tell you for sure that we could lock this and we don't need this geometry anymore. Because now, if I turn on my imagery, everything's kind of laying in place where it's supposed to be, and I can start to model my house. Now, as I mentioned, this is like all loose scale, and maybe when you do this, your field notes aren't going to be like as precise, and they're not going to line up perfectly. It doesn't matter, because we're going to now rebuild this model, and we're going to type in precise dimensions, and then we're eventually going to abandon the field notes, because at some point we just say we have our existing conditions model, we're good to go. So let me show you that. If I just like zoom in here, and this is how I would start. Is I would just say like, let me draw a square like this. And you can see that in the bottom right corner, I've got my measurements dialog box. I'm going to type 8,8, enter. And then I would pull this straight up, and I would pull it up by say 94 inches. So again, check out over here. It's like I can see that the ceiling height is at 94 inches there. So I just type 94, enter. And then when I want to move this way, and I'll turn off my imagery here. So now when I want to pull the wall this way, I know that from this wall to this point is 23 inches. So I can click once to start, tap Control, let go of the mouse, type 23, enter. Now I can do it again and type 35, enter. And then I do it again and type 23, enter. and then I do 36. It's super easy to just zip all the way around this and generate a super accurate existing conditions 3D model. Again, better information throughout the entire design process. You know, if you have like really bad field notes, those are going to net kind of not so great existing conditions, drawings, and models, which then is going to be misinforming your actual design. You know, that's where you go out there and you're like, oh my God, how did we like miss 10 inches? I don't know, something. It just always shows up that way. With this, you're really dialing it in and checking it every step of the way. So I've found that this process, I've used it many times over, and it does work exceptionally well. So let me hop back into our presentation here and talk a little bit about like what we do with this geometry. I might be just a little out of sync here, but we'll go with it. All right. So what we do with this geometry is we're going to eventually group it, and then we're going to layer it. All right. So we haven't talked about any sort of model organization. We haven't called anything a wall. We haven't called anything a door. The system for grouping and organizing models that I've created, it goes like this: level, element, location, condition. So each one of those pieces, level, element, location, condition, they're nested. So we have like this shell game going on where we have groups within groups within groups within groups. And each one of those groups, it gets a layer. So you can see that, you know, if you're familiar with layers, you select a group, you click on the Entity Info Layer dropdown, and you assign a layer like Level 1. Then you double click in, and there's another group, and that group has all your walls in it. You assign the layer Walls to that. Then you double click into that, and then you have all your exterior walls. So that's a group, and you assign the layer Location Exterior, double click in there, there's another group, and then you assign the layer Condition New. So the reason we're doing that is to fully control the model by, we can break it apart by levels, we can break it apart by interior and exterior and peel away the skin so we can see inside. We can keep it lightweight when we're working on just the outside. We can turn off all the stuff on the inside. We can also create demolition plans, control line weights. I mean, this is, it can get more complicated. You can add all kinds of stuff in here and make Condoc automate phases and option A, B, and C, and wall type 1, 2, and 3. There's all kinds of ways to make this more complicated. I explained that in the book, but this is the baseline system that works every single time for every single project, whether it's a 10-story renovation or a 1-story new construction. All right, so then here's the big idea again. So I find that you just got to kind of run through it and think about it. Level, so this is like a 2-story house, so we have 2 level groups. And then inside of there, inside of each one of those, we have 25 element groups. Elements are doors, windows, floors, framing. We have 25 different elements identified that an architect would need. And of course, you know, some people get in there and say, well, I'm really heavy on audio-visual equipment, so I want to have like a special AV equipment layer. No problem. You can do that. You can customize Condoc and use the configurator. All right, and then location being interior or exterior. So there's only 2 location groups, and then condition being new, existing, or demolished. So those are kind of the baseline there, and then all of your geometry goes into that last group, and that's where all of your edges, surfaces, and objects live on layer 0. All right, now I do get a lot of pushback, and a lot of people say, why are you nesting like this? This is like, I have to click in. In my opinion, it's first off, once you get the hang of it, it's no big deal to just drill in where you need to be and tap escape to get back out, and it moves really fast. But I can tell you that if you don't nest your containers like that and nest groups, you can't reuse layers. And what you end up with is like 300 layers to describe a 2-story house, because you need a layer that describes every single possible condition. So you would need a layer that describes like level 1, walls, exterior, demolished. And then you need another layer that describes like level 1, walls, exterior, existing. And then you'd have to go in and select those things and then click on the drop down and sift through 300 different layers to get to it. So with the system that we've created, it's a much more manageable layer list. And Furthermore, we have these things called model organization guides, and they're on the 3D warehouse. And what that is, it's a component that you can drop in your model, and it has these little tiles. Everything is already grouped for you. Everything is already completely layered for you. So all you have to do is put things in the right place. So we've kind of taken away the entire need to even assign layers. You just need to know how to get to where it's supposed to be and put the walls in the walls group and put the doors in the doors group. So that's the idea, is that drastically simplifying your layer list and getting full control of your model. Now, when you build your model like this, level, element, location, condition, it creates this series of switches. All right, so all of our switches are turned on right now. And so if I turn off the level, that's like, remember, the most outside container, it gets rid of the entire level 2. So it turns off the level, but it also turns off everything inside of there, like all the doors and walls and windows. Now, if I flip the level back on and turn off an element, we can do that. If we turn off our walls, you can see that when you turn off an element, that layer is included in levels 1 and 2, but as long as level 1 and 2 are on, you're going to see the walls are going to turn off across the board. It's just this series of switches that if one of them's turned off, they kind of behave in different ways because they're nested in this specific order. All right, and then the next one is like location. If I turn off exterior, then all of my exterior stuff goes away. So I tag my my windows and my doors as exterior, and that way if I just turn the exterior layer off, they all go away. All right, and then condition being new and existing and demolished, and this one's not quite as clear, but you can imagine like those are the existing walls that are left behind, and then the new walls are turned off. I'm sorry, new entities are turned off. So the new roof, the new floors, all that new stuff goes away. All right, and so then really what that leaves up to you is to just put the right object in the right container. That's the big idea here, is taking your walls and your doors and your windows and moving them into the right container. And then what you end up with, let's see, I think, and what you end up with is a model. Let me open up our existing conditions and kind of show you some of that.
So when you draw something new, or you draw it on that layer, you draw it on layer 0 and moving it to that layer.
That's, yeah, the second one is everything. So layer 0 is always your active current layer. So to keep it easy for you, it's just never change the layer from layer 0 as the active current layer. So you can just draw something, and then usually I'll kind of look at it in as like, I just get going, and then I'm like, all right, I don't want to get too far, so let's group this thing and then go put it where it needs to be. Yeah. But yeah, with this system, yeah, you're never like with CAD, you're always using match properties, and you're always, you start drafting and then you're like, I'm on the doors layer. I got to go back and fix this. Like you never remember to set the current layer. With this, your current layer is always layer 0, and then you just go put things in the proper containers. And once you've assigned a layer, like once you've assigned, level 1 doors, you don't have to assign it again. You just got to go put the level 1 doors in that container right next to the other doors. It's kind of a nice system in that way. I mean, once you get going with it, I wouldn't be pushing it if I didn't think it were easier. It's much easier than like having a layer that describes every scenario and then picking through your model and then hitting a drop down of every one of those objects. All right, so and I'm skipping around just a touch, but let me go through this other part of the presentation to kind of get synced up. This is where I was going to show you how to build your existing conditions model, and then we'll look at our existing conditions model, and we're going to run condoc and then kick those existing conditions drawings over to layout and then start the design process. So you can see I did do this in real time in SketchUp. I drew a square at like 8 inches by 8 inches, and then I push-pulled it up, and you can see that like we've got 94 inches is right there in our field notes. Makes it really easy. I don't have to like look at a piece of paper and then go back to my keyboard and type it in. Everything is happening right in front of me. I've got my headphones on, just jamming away, and I'm happy, you know. It's like so annoying to have all these like field notes all over the place and trying to manage that. All right, so then, of course, we pull it out by 23. You've got your dimensions right there. And you end up with something that looks like this. So we've extruded our plan horizontally. And I can't stress that one enough either, that like the first instinct is to extrude the plan vertically. And it just is not the best way to do it. I can tell you that when you extrude your plan horizontally using the push-pull tool, the push-pull tool cannot draw off axis. It will only push and pull perpendicular to the surface. So it's kind of a fail-safe that makes sure that you do not build geometry off axis. Because if things get off axis in SketchUp, it can be fixed, but it's certainly not fun to fix. And if you just stick with the technique, it works every time. So once you've gotten to that point, now you can start doing your window and door openings. So for instance, here we've got like our window height, sill height, window height. So we're just going to copy that line up by 30 inches, and then we're going to copy it up again by 55. So again, after I've extruded all my exterior walls, then I just run around the outside. It's like a factory production line. I'm just knocking this thing out, just doing what's in front of me, doing the work that's presented in front of me. All right, and then you end up with something that looks like this. And then, of course, you use your eraser tool. You just run around, you kind of clean it up, and then you've got your nice, clean exterior walls. So now, this is where all of my exterior walls need to go into a group, you know. I got to put these into a group and then call them our location exterior, and take my interior walls, put them into a group, and assign the layer location interior. Then I start layering on the extra groups. I select my interior and exterior walls, I put them in a group, and assign the layer walls. And then I go in there and I select any existing walls, make them existing for both of those, and add that other level of nesting and layering in there. So for this particular project, we're only using element location condition, because if there's not another story, another floor to compare it to, why bother calling it level 1? There's no level 2 right now, so it doesn't really matter, you know. And you can use the same logic when it comes to a new construction project. So if you're working on a new construction project, there's nothing that's existing or demolished, so just forget that whole level of organization. That's a way to simplify things. Although I will say, if you just want to learn and just level element location condition, it can be overkill, but it works every single time, and it's a way to just teach it and repeat it. And then once you understand it, you'll be like, you'll get it and say, oh no, I don't need a level and I don't need condition. It makes things just less clicks getting around. All right, then you can see that we've kind of created this entire model, and then we're going to move into SketchUp, and then I'll show you how Condoc can create these existing conditions drawings. All right, so for this, I'm just going to load up kind of our baseline Condoc. So I'll load up this is our Condoc Architect 2019. And so now that's reprogrammed Condoc to do a different trick. And when I say these like different tricks, I'll hit open again. You can see that we include a couple of different drawing sets. And I've been calling them Condoc Labs because they're just kind of these ideas that I have of like, what else can we do with Condoc? So one is like to create background drawings for consultants, which is huge. A lot of people, when I talk to anyone who wants to use SketchUp and layout for construction documents, they're like, well, how am I going to work with consultants? No problem. We have a Condoc drawing set. It creates all the scenes that you need to export each of your different building elements into a DWG. They all XREF together. You send them to the consultants, and it's like they don't even know that you're using SketchUp. You know, you can tell them, but they might have those preconceived notions that it's not accurate or that it doesn't work with CAD or whatever it may be. It's simply not true. You can kick out the DWGs, you can bundle them up for them, send it, and they can use the SketchUp backgrounds just the same as if you were using 2D CAD and communicating with them. Then we have like one for Canvas. That's like that 3D scanner, which is super cool. That generates a lot of generates existing conditions drawings for Canvas. And then Digital Site Survey is super fun to mess around with. That's like if you import topography, you can hit the Digital Site Survey, and it will chop it up and create a topography map. And then the Placemaker one is that it creates figure ground diagrams and aerial imagery maps, locator maps. So they're just like little tricks where you're like, oh, these guys are using certain layers, and I can automate that. So let's make a drawing, you know. So that's what the drawing sets are all about. All right, so we have loaded up our Condoc 19 drawing set. And so now you can see that in my plan generator, I get some different scenarios going on. So I've got like existing conditions plan. Honestly, at this stage of the game, that's the only thing that I really need. So when I click Setup Project, look at what happens up here. We're going to get these four scenes. Now each one of these scenes, three scenes. So we have light, heavy, and hatch A. So if you take each one of these scenes and put them into a viewport, so you have 3 viewports, and you stack them on top of each other, you're going to get one complete drawing. So that's what Condoc is all about. So now that's when I do the drawing export, I'm going to say I want my existing conditions plan at 1/4 inch, and so we're going to send that over into layout, and I'll say yes, and then OK, and this is going to bundle things up for me. So it's taking those 3 scenes, and now it's stacking them into a group, building a scrapbooking layout, giving each one of those different viewports a different render setting of raster vector hybrid. It's giving the light viewport a lighter line weight. It's giving the heavy a heavier line weight, setting up my hatch so that when I hop over here into layout, I can start a new document. And for this one, I would use like our Condoc template for an 11 by 17. And I go back to my Condoc drawings, and you can see this is going to have changed, and I can just drop this guy right onto my page. And so now I've got my existing conditions drawings. I like the existing conditions drawings to have that kind of like black hatch, because I'm going to put trace paper over it and start sketching out ideas and figure things out. Then we can also go to our Condoc annotations, and we can go with like, you can get there quick. If you got all these different pages here, we can just throw in some simple annotations like a drawing title, like that. And then we also have like room names. And so it's super easy just to kick out like some quick professional drawings. Of course, you could go in and double click and change those, but we'll just go to File, Export, PDF. All right, I'm going to save that to my desktop temp, and I could call this one like existing conditions. All right, so we'll export that. I think something that we forget a lot is that we need to produce something, right? And so like you make this SketchUp model, but you need it to like translate into drawings or images or renderings. And so that's what layout is all about, is just taking that model, turning it into something that's of value. So now I can print this on 11 by 17. It's at 1/4 inch scale. I roll my trace over it, I get my Sharpies, and I start thinking of ideas. I have a real hard time thinking and designing in the computer. I prefer to just like get a plan, get an idea, and then I can move really fast in the computer. If I have an objective, but if I'm just like thinking things through, it's frustrating to me, because I think just a Sharpie is such a quick tool to get an idea out and go, that didn't work, rather than spending 30 minutes modeling it and fumbling around with a 3D modeling program. Okay, so and I know we're getting there on time. Do we have 5 minutes here? Is that okay? So cool. I'll just show you the last part here, which is going to be our proposed conditions model, and then certainly I can stick around and answer any questions and all that. I'll close out of this, and I'll leave that open for now. Let's go back here. Okay, and then I'm going to open up our Condoc system. So this is another part of Condoc, is this just like automates all of your layers. So if I just want to get back to good, my model's all messed up, all my layers are all messed up, and I just click design, And when I click design, it brings me back to a place where I can actually work on my model. Instead of me going in and turning layers on and adjusting the style, I just click one button and I'm back to good. So what we would do now, like I mentioned, you would go and create your different your sketches, and you've got a plan. And so now you've got to start modeling inside of SketchUp. So we've got a direction to move in. So you're going to start moving the entities out of existing and putting them into demolished, because you're going to like knock down a wall. So you got to like go in and take, say for instance, and I think maybe like an interior wall might be like a better example. Like, so if we wanted to move this thing around, I might like take this and pull it out of here. So I copied it. We're going to like get rid of this wall, and then maybe get rid of this wall. And then I'm going to like move over and find like where we're at interior. Here's our existing. I'll paste this in place and then pull it like 4.5 and call this. Now this is going to be in a group, and we're going to call that one demolished. So that goes on demolished. So that's how you start moving things around. And I've assigned that layer demolished, and now I can take any of my walls and put them into that layer demolished. So let me show you what that looks like in a more like diagrammatic form. All right, so here's our existing conditions. This is how it's all set up. We need to start moving things out of our existing conditions group and putting it into our demolished. That's how we like knock down a wall, get rid of a toilet and a shower, tear the roof off. You just move it. You don't want to like delete it, because you want a record of it. And ultimately, you're going to have to make a demolition plan where you need all this stuff to be dashed and hatched or something to show that we're getting rid of it. So we hold on to it and move it to demolished. The other thing that's, the other tip, when you're moving into this phase, is that you save your existing conditions model, and then you save as, and you call it proposed conditions. So now you have this like record of your existing conditions as it was when you finished, and you can always go back and you can get what you need out of there. And it's easy to paste in place between models. All right, and then when you start developing new ideas, you add those to the new level of model organization. So you start building your new walls and call those new. All right, so then what this looks like, this is what we call a scope diagram. And this is in SketchUp, we have a style that shows a color by layer. And so our new layer is green, our existing layer is gray, and our demolished layer is orange. And this is a super informative way to look at a 3D model and just see that this is new, this is demolished, and this is existing. And so ultimately, that's what the model looks like. So I'm just going to open that up. I'll open up that model, and so we can go with our proposed conditions here. And this one's our condoc ready. And we're not going to save those. And I'll just show you what this looks like, and then I'll click a few buttons on this condoc system, and then we'll wrap things up here in just 2 minutes. All right, so this is like the entire, this is a real project. It did not get built, but it was a real project, and we took it all the way into like some pretty advanced like presentation drawings. But here's the idea is when I click on these houses, you can see it's like element context. If I double click again, these guys are called exterior. So the context is controlled by the layers, context and exterior. So if I just click on like interior, I can very quickly just snap to a point where I can work on the inside of this house. So that's extremely helpful. And then I can go like, I want to isolate level 1, level 2. So whenever you're working in 3D, it's always a battle to like get things out of your way. And these buttons help you do that very quickly. And then when you say, yeah, but I need to get back to where I was, all on. And that just gets you right back where you were. Or if you click design, that kind of gives a whole system reset and gets you back where like, out of those like construction document styles and all that. But these buttons I've found to be extremely helpful when you're just kind of working through, figuring things out and getting to where you need to be without having to hide and move things out of your way. All right, so I'll click on design. So this is our design model, and then let me just like kind of illustrate this point of like layers and groups. All right, so here's level 2. So I'm going to double click into level 2. I'm also going to go to View, Component Edit, and choose Hide Rest of Model. So that way I can isolate, the group that I'm in, and it makes it clear what's happening. All right, so I'm going to back out. I click once, level 2. Double click in. Inside of level 2, inside of that group, there's another group. There's several groups. There's like walls, trim, floors, barriers, windows, doors. So each one of these is a layer. So let's go with walls. I double click in. Now I have exterior walls and I have interior walls. I can double click in and now I have new. So then I double click in there and then we've got everything is on layer 0. So it goes level, element, location, condition. If you stick to that model organization, not only do the Condoc tools work, but I mean, honestly, even if you're not using Condoc, it's just a clean way to organize things and makes a usable model. So then, I would go through and we've run the plan generator several times, but you can imagine if I just go in here and say plan generator, and then let's look at our scenes, and let's go with a foundation plan, a renovation construction plan, demolition plans, reflected ceiling plans, presentation, furniture, roof plan. So we have all these different plans, and if I click Setup Project, watch what happens here. Oh, and also we need our levels. So we have 2 levels, and our levels are at like roughly 5 and 15 feet. So I'll do that, and I'll click Setup Project, and the amount of work that Condoc is doing to automate this, it is just rattling off layers, styles, scenes. It's insane how much time that would take to do all that. That's like the beauty of computers, right? And Ruby scripting is you push the button and it just spits out like 100 scenes. And then it's also going to automate this idea of moving it into layout and stacking the viewports. Everything like in the first edition of my book, I mean, and I went around teaching this technique and the manual technique, and it was painful because it is painful. I mean, it's just a lot of work to like do all this stuff manually. And then to have Condoc now where it just rattles this stuff off for you. And so you've got all these set up. And then I really like these. I got to show you the elevation tool. So I just click here and it asks me, what kind of elevation do you want? I love the dot screen. So I'll click on dot screen. And then it snapshots those elevation views. And then it's going to return me back to where I was. Let's see. There we go. And then I can go over here, and then again, I hit the elevation, and I click here. It says, which one do you want? I'm going to go elevation dot screen. And then I'll show you what those look like. These are really cool. I set these up in Condoc 4 when we were able to start stacking elevation drawings. We were able to make some really cool things happen with the shadows. So we do like that zipatone dot screen. So here's elevation 1 primary. So that's just kind of like your plain elevation, and it's going to be a vector viewport. It's going to just be black line work, and then underneath it though, I'm going to use this shadows. So this is our shadows, and I'm going to just adjust our shadows a bit, and so I can get it to a point where they're kind of falling on, giving a better look than just simply casting shade across the whole thing. So let's see, we need to be like something more like this would be cool, like that. And then I can just go back and do a little bit of manual work and adjust my shadow settings. So that way, when these viewports get stacked, like if I just kick these over, and I'm going to only kick out my 2 elevations at 1/4 inch, and I'll do my renovation construction plan. And I'll click Send to Layout. And so we'll save it. So now it's taking all those drawings, it's bundling them up, and it's going to put them into our Condoc drawings scrapbook over here. And and I won't go through that whole process, but let me just go and open this drawing set. So proposed conditions, and here's our permit set. Didn't quite get finished with this one, but I'll show you what like the more polished final drawings look like that come from this. All right, so here's this. So here's some drawings. You can see we used like our dimension tool, set up our dimensions. We used our condoc annotations to label. So we got going on all that. And then if I go to the next page, I want to show you the dot screen elevations. Those are super cool. It did not. No. Sorry. This is a set that I've developed a little further, and I did add annotations so that it will give you the cartoon set drawings. And then, I mean, when it comes to dimensions, like with the dimension tool, let's say like I want to run a string, I can just hit S and sample that dimension, and then it's like, you know, if I just go click here and here, and then set my dimension, I can then just double click and double click and double click. So there are some nice new tools for making dimensioning rather quick. And while it would be cool if it auto-dimensioned, I never trust it, you know? I'm like, I have to go back and look at it anyway because I know that it's going to do something dumb and somebody's going to call me out on it. So let's see. Here's our section drawings. Of course, we have a plan generator, elevation tool, section tool, and then these are the elevations with that, like, you know, dot screen shadows, and I just like the way they look, and you get kind of a nice pop out of them. And then let's check our condoc drawings. And so you can see here, let's see, maybe I didn't click, I didn't say okay, got it. Okay, so back through here. So condoc tools, SketchUp, layout, super compatible with all these different plugins. The idea, what I set out to create was not like this rigid system that you have to do it my way. I love that, like with the configurator, the ability to work with anyone's layers, the ability to save your own drawing sets. You know, estimator for SketchUp, if you're super into like framing, every framing member, every 2x4 and counting and costing those, John Brock created estimator for SketchUp, and he uses his own layering deal. We can automate his layers. Placemaker, I showed you that. All of these guys, all these popular plugins, if they're using their own layers, we can address them or we can ignore them. You can program SketchUp to ignore it with a drawing set as well. And then when it comes to any of the rendering programs, of course, my favorite is Lumion, but any of the plugins that run inside of SketchUp, these models that we create are used to generate the drawings, but they're also used to create our stills, animations, virtual tours, virtual reality. It's a very seamless workflow of one design model that generates all the collateral for all of your presentations. Takes a little bit to learn. So, you know, the book explains it. We've got the videos. You guys have a bunch of licenses of condoc. You can get in there, watch the tutorials. So give it a shot. And I really appreciate you guys having me in, and thank you for your patience and attention. Appreciate it. So, cool. Thank you.